Shibuya, October 31st. After the emergence of 4 separate curtains and sealing of Satoru Gojo within Prison Realm, Jujutsu Society is on high alert, with the situation growing more dire as the number of sorcerers continues to dwindle. The losses certainly outweigh the victories for our protagonists. Even our main point of view, Itadori Yuji, has found defeat at the hands of special grade cursed womb Choso. At almost the exact same time, the disaster curse of the land Jogo is placing the finishing touches on the Zenin clan head Naobito, the second fastest sorcerer behind Satoru Gojo, when he feels a sudden fluctuation of pressure fill the air around Shibuya. As the essence of fear fills his body, Jogo can make no mistake, the king of curses, Ryomen Sukuna, has had a finger awakened at some location in the city. Only a short distance away, Mimiko and Nanako, Geto's adopted children, are taking a finger of Sukuna that they had in their possession and attempting to force feed it to Itadori in hopes to awaken Sukuna and ask a favor of the vengeful spirit. However, at this point, with the conjoining of Sukuna and Yuji's souls, even if Itadori was to eat all 20 fingers at this point, he probably wouldn't lose his body to the vengeful spirit, unless he was to devour them all at once. As Jogo arrives on the scene, he interrogates both Mimiko and Nanako on their Sukuna finger, but when they refuse to cooperate, Jogo decides not to waste any more time on them and ignites them into flames. The mark still softly residing within Itadori's skin, Jogo pulls out a scroll full of 10 more Sukuna fingers in an attempt to overwhelm the vessel with power and jumpstart a body possession for the Spirit King. As Jogo finishes funneling the wax fingers down Yuji's gullet, he realizes that both of Geto's daughters survived his previous Inferno attack. The look on his face is one of slight annoyance before his expression rockets into surprise, taking notice finally that his entire arm has been ripped clean from place. Originally holding Itadori's head with a tight grip, when the King of Curses rose to his feet, Jogo's wrist came right with him. And when the vengeful spirit commanded the disaster curse to move, Jogo complied without a second thought and scuttered to the back of the room with Geto's daughters. The overwhelming evil aura caused all 3 of them to erupt into a cold sweat. The 2 human girls, too terrified to even take a breath in the presence of such a malicious enigma. The king takes notes that the peasantry has yet to bow their heads, and as if their bodies moved on instinct, all 3 of them were kneeling before the vengeful spirit in complete and utter submission. Jogo even losing half of his own head because he only found it necessary to go down on one knee. The vengeful spirit smirk, revealing that this was being let off easy, as he turned his attention to the 2 human girls who clearly had their own separate intentions for feeding a finger to his vessel. Feeling generous today, he says he'll offer them each 1 finger's worth of time. The twins refusing to make the mistake of looking the demon god in the eyes. Timidly, they ask their wish of Sukuna to use his overbearing strength and eliminate the one with stitches on his forehead, the snake that has slithered its way into the body of the one they treasure most. They want him to pay for desecrating their loved one's body, and are willing to reveal the location of a second finger they have in their possession if Sukuna completes their request. With a calm, graceful demeanor, the Lord asks his subject to raise their heads with confidence, and almost immediately in the same second erases one of them from existence with a myriad of slashes to the top half of their body. Now, with the blood of her sister splattered all over her, Nanako screams out for the eviscerated Mimiko before ripping her phone out and attempting to attack the King of Curses in a fit of rage. But in the same amount of time it took her to make that split decision, the top half of her skull was already on the floor, along with the rest of her. After immediately deducting the girl's curse technique from a slight glance at her phone, Sukuna crushes the apparatus in his grasp and casts his attention over to the disaster spirit. Jogo, who after witnessing what happened to the last people who asked Sukuna for a favor, decides to request absolutely nothing from the vengeful spirit, instead admitting that his revival was the curse's ultimate objective. Jogo's only hope would be that Sukuna would take this opportunity to create a permanent possession vow with his vessel. The vengeful spirit declines this line of thinking though, much to Jogo's surprise, having assumed obtaining complete control of Itadori's body would be in Sukuna's best interest. Sukuna, of course, has his own plans. In the name of fun though, finding a chance to enjoy the opportunity that he's been given, in exchange for Jogo landing 1 single hit on Sukuna, Sukuna will tag along with the Disaster Curse's plan of eliminating all of the humans located in Shibuya. All but 1, that is, to which Jogo uncomfortably accepts. Outside, Kusakabe and Panda are in the middle of an encounter with some of Suguru Geto's curse user family. They stand against Jujutsu High to defend the dream of the one they once idolized. It seems the two groups have cornered each other though, and Kusakabe is much more happy dealing with these kinds of threats than any of the special grade curse spirits running around the city. It's right at that moment a giant explosion of flames erupts from a tall building in the background. Again, a horrifying aura of malice tears through the atmosphere before Jogo is seen being thrown directly from the destruction, the King of Curses not following too far behind. Sukuna's expression flutters with joy as he taunts the cursed spirit, as Jogo himself does his best to muster up his strongest flames, dedicating his determination to landing just one single hit. But the disaster curse can't even find the time to charge up an actual attack, as by the time one forms, Sukuna is able to cut both of Jogo's hands off at the wrist, and before he knows it, the vengeful spirit has already gotten behind him, slamming him back down towards the ground, and then re-diverting his course with some personal direction into a building beside them, tearing the cursed spirit through every last floor of the skyscraper, leaving a hole just large enough to allow the moonlit Halloween night to illuminate Jogo, picking his jaw back up from the floor ever so gracefully, flashing back to his boasting at Kenjaku about his power level in relation to Sukuna's fingers. Despite Sukuna weighing in at barely double the initial estimation, Jogo is still in disbelief the gap in their power level is truly this wide. Giving him just enough time to reattach his lower teeth, Sukuna grabs Jogo by the hood and lifts him back up into the fray. But not showing any signs of giving up, the disaster curse blows the entire skyscraper to hell with a humongous inferno. Sukuna, effortlessly dodging, skates backwards along the passing airwaves. Coming from around the corner, this time the cursed spirit has summoned his maximum technique, the fullest and most true realization of Jogo's own curse technique, calling upon a full-sized meteor and amassing it so close to the Earth's atmosphere the entire area of Shibuya trembles beneath the oncoming planetary threat. Directly in the radius of the meteor's area of effect, both Kusakabe and Panda attempt to make quick work of any enemies and escape. Kusakabe correctly comparing them to the size of ants trying to move underneath tap-dancing elephants. In classic demon time fashion, the vengeful spirit arrives on the scene before Kusakabe is even able to finish his declaration of fleeing. The King of Curses calmly demands that his subjects stay put as the meteor crashes down to Earth. Their only choice is to either die by meteor or die by Sukuna, it seems. Death approaches ever closer, as the King of Curses watches his peasants sweat like their lives depend on it. The kind king does let them leave at the last second though, truly benevolence at its finest, as the meteor crushes a large portion of the city of Shibuya beneath it. Exhaustion plagues Jogo as he begins to reach the limit a cursed spirit has to offer. Desperate to know that his efforts didn't go to waste, he estimates that he had to have at least done some kind of damage to Sukuna with that large of an attack. But right on cue, the vengeful spirit arrives with no signs or show of harm whatsoever, proving that even Jogo's strongest ability isn't capable of actually landing on the demon. Questioning why Jogo doesn't use his domain expansion, the cursed spirit admits he already knows he'd lose in a battle of domains, to which Sukuna disrespectfully taunts the volcano spirit about his loss to Satoru Gojo being the reason why he feels that way. In order to keep the festivities going, instead of a domain battle, Sukuna offers a battle of apples to apples. With a summoning command, the vengeful spirit unlocks a curse technique that allows him to wield and manipulate flames, almost on the same expert level as Jogo. Much to his surprise, but Jogo begins charging up a fire blast and readying for a clash anyway, already knowing that the answer to his question doesn't change the situation he's in. Clapping his hands together, a tornado of ember amasses inside of Sukuna's hands. Stretching out, the flame would be spread wide into an arrow shape, taking aim at the disaster curse as Jogo himself also prepares to meet Sukuna in this fire battle head-on. Instead of attacking Sukuna with his utmost intensity, the cursed spirit turns to find himself amongst the void. His fellow disaster spirits reside with him, understanding that this, in fact, is the end. In his final moments, Sukuna gives the fellow curse spirit some closure and life advice. But before the curse has even a semblance of a second to try and comprehend what this sadness is, his existence burns to ashes, his being melting away in the very flames he once felt comfortable building a domain in. The King of Curses erases his opponent of all traces after surpassing him in his very own art. As Sukuna looks over his kill, a decent distance away in a separate location, Megumi Fushiguro Fushiguro has finally revealed his trump card, the 8-handled sword divergent Silent Divine General Mahoraga, the penultimate shadow Shikigami of the 10 Shadows technique. Due to not being fully tamed by Fushiguro, an exorcism ritual has taken place between himself and the luck sorcerer Haruta Shigemo. The creature is indiscriminate in its destructive path, immediately knocking its summoner out and into a building beside them. Instantly sensing the danger from afar, the King of Curses is immediately pulled into a feeling of alert when realizing that Fushiguro's cursed energy track has went cold. Despite meeting up with his old servant Ryomen, he must cut the reunion short in an attempt to keep his contingency plan safe. Revealing that it won't be much longer until he's completely free, the boastful vengeful spirit is able to ignite a level of speed and reaction time quick enough to not only teleport a large stretch of space away, but rescue a liability like Haruta at the same time. Just on a hunch alone, the King of Curses was able to keep Megumi in a state of suspended death, so long as Shigemo the Luck Sorcerer, the other half of the exorcism ritual, also survives. The only way to make the ritual null and void is to put the Shikigami down as an outsider of the summoning spell, and allow Megumi to recover in the meantime. Sukuna approaches the Shikigami demigod without a single ounce of hesitation or concern, confident enough to take the full brunt of Mahoraga's very first sword slash with nothing but his own wrist as a defense. With cursed energy flow durable enough to withstand the physical strike itself, he is instantly able to take note of the abnormality of the attack before detaching himself from the situation and hitting Mahoraga back point blank, finishing his string of combos with a triple cross slash using the dismantle aspect of the King's curse technique. As the monstrosity falls to a knee, the vengeful spirit's rapid assessment of the opponent before him begins. He takes note that his enemy uses a sword specifically charged by positive energy. Meanwhile, the wheel on Mahoraga's head spins as the wounds on its body regenerate almost on cue. The King of Curses cracks a smile, his interest piqued. Another dismantle tossed its way. This time, the Shikigami reacts immediately and deflects Sukuna's curse technique, despite normally being invisible to the natural eye. Preparing for the oncoming counterattack, suddenly Sukuna is struck with a blow of massively refined negative energy this time around. Caught enough off guard to be sent flying across the sky and through multiple buildings, the beast finding absolute joy as it begins to use what it's learned effectively. Blasted back into a pile of office debris, the King of Curses barely has time to acknowledge the Shikigami's tenacity before another attack is aimed right between his eyes. Sukuna is able to roll out of the way, finally growing comfortable enough in Itadori's skin to perform some decent acrobatics. The vengeful spirit is able to open the larger creature up into a vulnerable position with his flexibility and plant a hand directly on its skull, bifurcating the Shikigami's upper half and sending it back down to the floor below with a well-placed kick to the membrane. Starting to get a feel for its technique, his theories are confirmed as he watches the wheel above Mahoraga's head spin once again, causing the being to recover and once again adapt to the information it's being presented with. Faced with a demigod capable of reacting to and learning from any power that is used against it, the vengeful spirit can't help but chuckle to himself. If it were him from back at the detention center, only powered by a maximum of 3 fingers, perhaps this monster actually could have gotten the best of him. And for showing him this level of power, Sukuna couldn't be happier. Everything and more is possible now, and it's all thanks to Fushiguro Megumi. Sukuna wastes not a second longer and awakens the hunger within, calling forth Malevolent Shrine, the domain of the king. Expanded forth to the environment around him, Sukuna's power does not create a separate space within a barrier. Instead, the king subjugates an entire 200-meter radius to his wrath, enforcing his dominance and divine will on all found within. The ability to realize one's innate domain without a barrier is akin to an artist painting a masterpiece, not on canvas, but on air. A truly divine technique. Narrowing his effective range to 140 meters in order to keep Fushiguro just outside of his reach, commanding the technique of Cleave to eradicate anything with cursed energy, and Dismantle to annihilate all inanimate objects without. The devastation of Malevolent Shrine does not wane until everything inside of its grasp is torn asunder, and that includes Mahoraga. As the entire city of Shibuya comes crumbling down, what were once human beings and civilization is reduced to bygones. Standing amidst the torrent of destruction, Sukuna watches as the entire town falls apart around him. As the shuddering Shikigami emerges from the wreckage, Mahoraga is immediately met with an arrow built of inferno before it even has the chance to acknowledge the original attack it was damaged by. A final explosion for good measure. In the wake of the plume of towering flames lay a wasteland of nothingness. Once where a metropolis of myriad emotions and wonder lie, instead only a vengeful spirit remains. Picking up what's left of the vanquished Shikigami and tossing it out of the aftermath, he walks away from a coming undone Haruto Shigemo, who just happened to run out of his last miracle. As his hands begin to tremble, the King of Curses knows his time is almost up. He needs to get Megumi to a healer and then proceed to set Itadori up for the largest amount of trauma any one man can try to endure. In the aftermath of Sukuna's rampage on Shibuya, thousands of people were erased that Halloween. Toge Inumaki lost his arm in the domain. Had any more important people been within range, without Sukuna's knowledge, the entire series of Jujutsu Kaisen could have came to an end right there. With literally no reason to live and no one to come back to, Yuji would wander aimlessly, alone, until it was time to fulfill Sukuna's hidden agenda.